Good.
Wonderful. All right, so it's 5:32 on Monday, January 11th, 2021, and we are here at the Share Advisory Committee meeting. Just a reminder that due to the current state of COVID and governor's directives that we are strictly on Zoom right now. And people who wanted to, or who do still want to send in public comment are sending it to sharecommittee@washoeschools.net. Okay, so I'm sorry, I forgot 1.0. No, I guess I didn't because I'm reading it in order. All right, so looking at 1.01, call to order at 5:33, and 1.02 roll call.
Okay, so that's me, Sarah Kaiser.
Present.
Okay, Lydia DeFlorio. Didn't we see
Muted,
her?
girl.
She's here somewhere. There she is.
I'm here. My computer
Okay.
wasn't unmuting, but I'm here.
Okay, Sylvia Gonzalez. Okay, Tanya Hayes.
Present.
Manuel Magana.
I am here.
Kelly Roper, I am here. Andrea Thompson.
I'm here.
Ashley Wade.
Present.
And Rabbi Benjamin Zober.
I am here.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Okay. So moving on to 1.03, action to adopt the agenda. So I'd be looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. And just a reminder, we can move items, or we can take them out of order, but I don't plan on doing that.
I, Sarah Kaiser, move that we adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Sarah.
I, Manny Magana, second that.
Thank you. So all in favor of adopting this agenda?
Aye.
Hi.
I
Any opposed? And so we adopt the agenda on motion by Sarah Kaiser and second by Manny. Oh my gosh, Manny, I should have written down your last name. Sorry. Magana. There it is. I had it.
There you go.
And we passed unanimously. Okay. Moving on to the meat of our meeting. Let's see. So 2.01, a possible approval of the minutes from our meeting on November 9th for possible action. And is there any discussion? And if not, I'd be ready for a motion.
I just have, there's a misspelling of my name on 1.03 in the minutes, but I don't care, but there's an extra A in there.
Okay.
All right. I'll make a motion. I, Andrea Thompson, would like to put forth the approval of the minutes from November 9th, 2020 for the Share Advisory Committee meeting.
Thank you, Andrea.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. All right. So all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And so the motion passes to adopt the minutes from the November 9th meeting unanimously. Wonderful. Okay, it's so strange not being in person because I normally after such a week like this, I would have checked in with every, like, how are you? So I just want you to know, I'm thinking, I wish I could hug all of you, honestly. Okay, so sorry, that's the elementary school teacher in me. 2.02, presentation and discussion of the proposed Share 6th grade lesson, understanding HIV and AIDS for discussion and possible action.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we'll go through like we have been the past few times. Oh, hold please. Everybody close your eyes, otherwise it'll make you dizzy. Okay. Almost there. Almost. Okay. Can everybody see it?
Yes, Rochelle, can I
Okay.
ask you one question before you start, just so that we're clear when your slides come up on your shared screen for if anyone's watching? You have up in the upper right-hand corner 7th grade, but do you
Oh.
want to tell us for the record that it's supposed to be 6th grade for all of this?
Yes, Kelly, thank you.
Okay.
This is supposed to be 6th grade. There's always something that happens, right? Like one little bleep, because a lot of times I take the format that we have, you know, we're always starting kind of with the same thing, and evidently, oops, forgot that. But yes, this is 6th grade. And along those lines, I think it's really important, especially since we have new Board of Trustee members as well, to always remind whoever's listening, since we can't see them, that share, for anybody to participate and share, they have to have parent permission, and parents can always opt their child out. So as we transition into a new group of trustees, and perhaps as we're going into the younger grades, it's important to remind our folks that we do have those protections in place. So the objectives for the Understanding HIV and AIDS lesson: define HIV as a virus that is transmitted through bodily fluids that weaken your immune system. Identify the difference between communicable and non-communicable diseases. Identify at least 2 ways in which HIV can be transmitted. Identify at least 2 ways in which HIV is not transmitted. Identify at least 1 way to prevent HIV transmission, and identify at least 1 treatment for HIV. Activities, you'll see I selected the same video that you all approved for 6th grade. There was such good feedback and reception from you all. I thought we should just continue on, and I think it's a strong video myself. And then the other activity is facts about HIV. So a little bit of lesson prep. And then again, we have the same intro, trying to keep consistent with all of our lessons. Share is important for everyone in the class. The goal is for every one of you to feel that these classes relate to you in your life. This curriculum and resulting class discussions are intended to be respectful and inclusive of many perspectives, and allow all students to see themselves and understand their own health and sexuality. And the purpose of Share is to assist you in making informed choices and avoid behaviors that put you at risk. And lastly, all questions are welcome. If you don't feel comfortable asking in class, I provide a paper for anonymous questions, or you may talk with me later. So here we go. HIV and AIDS. At least I have it there, Kelly, 6th grade. So begin the activity by asking if anyone knows what communicable or non-communicable diseases are. And the slide, communicable and non-communicable diseases. Communicable being contagious and can be spread from person to person. Non-communicable cannot be spread from person to person. And explain communicable diseases are diseases that one person can give to another or get from someone else. Ask students for examples of communicable diseases. Some responses most likely will include COVID-19, common cold, stomach virus, the flu, whatever else they have. Those are just some examples. Say communicable diseases are caused by tiny organisms or germs that are contagious. Non-communicable diseases are those that cannot be spread from one person to another. And then asking for examples of non-communicable diseases. Some responses may include, again, these are just examples: appendicitis, an infected finger, asthma, cancer. Tell students you're going to name some different medical problems people may have, and they should tell you whether they are communicable or not. Ask, is this communicable disease? Can you get a sore throat from someone? Can you get allergies from someone? Can you get a broken arm from someone? Can you get lice from someone? Can you get cavities from someone? And then the answer key right below. And then asking for questions they may have about certain illnesses. If it's communicable, respond and explain why. If it's non-communicable, either it is caused by a germ that is not contagious or it is not caused by a germ at all. If unsure, let students know. You'll find out and get back to them with the correct info. And then this is just a little bit of teacher info. Non-communicable diseases are also known as chronic diseases, tend to be of long duration and are the result of a combination of genetics, physiological, environmental, and behavioral factors or behaviors. The main types are cardiovascular disease like heart attacks and stroke, cancers, chronic respiratory diseases, and diabetes. And then there's a fact sheet that they can access if they have further questions, perhaps student questions, and they need some background information, more background information. Tell students that you want to talk about a particular communicable disease or infection, excuse me, called HIV. And then ask students what they've heard of HIV. HIV standing for human immunodeficiency virus. Breaking it down, human, it's a people disease. Immunodeficiency, breaking that down further, refers to the immune system. Deficiency refers to when something is lacking or missing. HIV is a virus that attacks the immune system and makes it weak, so it's harder for the body to fight off other infections. HIV is the virus that can lead to AIDS. And then this is exactly what I just read to you on the slide as far as the breakdown of the terminology. So step 4, telling students the way we usually keep people from getting a virus is by giving them a vaccine, which is an injection or shot that they can get to protect them from getting a particular infection for many years. Just like a lot of people get a flu vaccine, a lot of children get a vaccine for the chickenpox and for measles. And then explaining that there is not a vaccine though for HIV, but there are ways to prevent contracting the disease. So preventing HIV, practicing abstinence. And then I have our new updated definition of abstinence. I'm not going to read through it if that's okay, because we've visited that many a times. And then preventing HIV continued, never sharing needles, using condoms the right way every time. If you're having sex, there are also HIV prevention medicines, the pre-exposure prophylaxis, I hope I said that right, and the post-exposure prophylaxis. If you have HIV, there are many actions that you can take to prevent transmitting HIV to others. Today, more tools than ever are available to prevent HIV. You can use strategies such as abstinence, not having sex, never sharing needles, and using condoms the right way every time if you're having sex. You might also be able to take advantage of HIV prevention, which I just read to you up there. And if you have HIV, there are many actions you can take to prevent transmitting HIV to others. Again, sharing the link to the CDC website. Again, this is, teacher background knowledge as well. Tell students that there are some effective treatments called antiretroviral therapy. I practice that too. That can reduce the likelihood of transmitting HIV to others, slow the way HIV grows in a person's body, and prolong the life of someone living with HIV. There are also treatments for the illnesses that HIV can cause, but once someone is living with HIV, there currently is no way to rid the body completely of HIV. Although with treatment, people living with HIV can have a normal life expectancy. And since there is no vaccine to prevent HIV and there's no way to rid the body of HIV, once someone has it, it's very important to know how HIV is transmitted so we can know how to avoid getting it or manage the virus if we were born with it. And then luckily HIV is hard to get. It's not an easy infection to transmit like the cold or the flu. HIV is in some bodily fluids like blood and not in others like sweat, tears, saliva, or urine. HIV can only be transmitted through one of the infected body fluids. HIV can be passed through blood, semen, or vaginal fluids. In addition, it can be passed through breast milk if someone is breastfeeding an infant. HIV can only be passed from a person who is living with HIV. And if two people are not infected, then neither one can give it to the other. And HIV is in some bodily fluids like blood and not in others like sweat, tears, saliva, or urine. This is, again, the background for the slide. Can be transmitted through one of the infected body fluids, can be passed through blood, semen, or vaginal fluids, and additionally passed through breast milk if someone's breastfeeding. And of course, to remind, it's very important to remember that HIV can only be passed from the person who is living with HIV. Again, that's just restating what was on the slide. And then the video, understanding HIV and AIDS, learn the facts, fight the stigma, stay safe. And then moving on to step 6, pass out facts about HIV, which are located at the back of the packet. Have students work in pairs to complete the worksheet once all have been completed. And again, we always leave the choice of how the activity is going to be completed up to the classroom teacher. And as of right now, we're not having students necessarily working in pairs. They could work whole group or individually, again, what best meets the need of the teacher and the class at any given time. Once all that have been completed, review the questions with the class. All answers are true. For each question, again, this background knowledge for the teacher, provide the answers as well as an explanation for why it is true. And there's a teacher's guide at the end of the packet. And then tell students, now that you know that HIV is not easy to transmit, can anyone give an example of some things you can do with a friend or a family member who is infected with HIV that are perfectly safe, meaning they can't transmit HIV? So provide the first few examples so students understand what you're asking. Say, for example, you can hug someone with HIV, you can give someone a kiss on the cheek, you can share food with them. Who wants to give us another example? So possible responses can include a wide range of behaviors, including sitting on a toilet someone with HIV has sat on, swimming in a pool together, sitting next to an HIV positive person, going to school with someone who has HIV, etc. And then slide 9, remember HIV is a serious communicable disease. It's also very difficult to catch. As long as we know how HIV is transmitted, we can protect ourselves and be good friends and family members to people who we know with HIV or AIDS. The only way to know for sure is if someone has HIV is to get tested. And then conclude the lesson by saying HIV is a serious infection. Again, what we have on the slide. And then, I apologize for the formatting. Every time I go from PDF, from Word to PDF, everything kind of slides down and moves around. So this would be on a sheet by itself. The facts about HIV, write true next to the statements that are true and false next to the statements that are false. You cannot get HIV. And this is the activity that was spoken to just a few minutes ago about the answers being true. You cannot get HIV by being in the same room with a person who's living with HIV. So far, there's no vaccine to prevent HIV. HIV cannot be transmitted by sneezing. HIV is a communicable, contagious disease. You cannot get HIV from sharing a drink. HIV affects the body's immune system. AIDS and HIV are two different things. If you come into contact with the blood of someone who is not living with HIV, you cannot get HIV. Someone who uses the same needle as someone who is living with HIV to use drugs can contract HIV. And if someone with HIV is bleeding, they can transmit HIV to someone else. And then here is the facts about HIV. And a little bit of the background information as to why, each answer is the answer it is. And that is it for this lesson. Unless you want me to go through all the answers too, that they're all true.
I think we can trust we've all taken the moment to read that. Thank you.
That's what I kind of thought. I feel like I repeat myself when I read the slide and then, what the teacher is to say, but that's okay. So I'm going to stop sharing and then we can have a discussion or if you would like me to keep it up, I can do that. What would you prefer?
If you wouldn't mind just stopping sharing for a minute, and then if we need to come back to the document, we can pull it up again.
Okay.
I just like to see everybody.
Me too.
Thank you, Rochelle. Once again, beautifully done. Thank you so much. I can tell that you've really put some, your experience and your expertise into this, and I appreciate it. So you guys are ready to go. Okay, so we'll start with Manny.
Let me lower my hand first. There we go. Yeah, Rochelle, this was awesome and quite thorough. The only suggestion, or actually the only thing that I think I would like, is on slide 7, if we maybe just rearrange the bullets, and we had the bullet that said HIV can be passed through blood, semen, or vaginal fluids, and then the sub bullet below it. In addition, it can be passed through breast milk if someone is breastfeeding an infant. I think that should actually be our first bullet point, and then everything else kind of follows after that. Aside from that, honestly, this was amazing.
Okay, so Manny, you're saying, so just to clarify, and I understand, you want that chunk at the top of the bullet list.
Yeah, especially since it's
that way.
Yeah, especially since it's bolded, I think that should be brought at the top, and that, since that's like what the main attention is, it appears in that slide.
Okay.
But aside from that, though, I mean, you can keep the order for everything else. Looks just fine, and everything else looks great. That was the only recommendation that I have on this.
Thank you, Manny. Kelly?
Okay, I loved it, Rochelle. And I watched the whole video, and then I was like, is this the same video? So I liked it. The one part I didn't love, and it took me a while to catch on to, and the committee, you may disagree with me, and this is not a sword I need to fall on, but I didn't like the wording, HIV is not easy to get. Like, I understand where you're coming from, especially in this world of COVID, where people are getting infected and they don't even know when they're getting infected, how they're getting infected, who they're getting it from. So I understand why you're saying that, but within the realm of, if you do specific activities, it's probably fairly easy to get if somebody doesn't have it under control, right? Like, so I don't know if it would be better phrased like, HIV is not something you get going about your daily routine or something like that. And I just throw it out to you guys to see if you have any input, but because it's elsewhere, and I don't know if it's in slide 9 or if it's down lower. I just didn't like, it's also very difficult to catch. Like, I just feel like we could phrase it better, and I don't know how. So I'd like to ask you guys, if you want to keep it. I'm not going to fight you over it, but if you have better ideas, I would like to hear them.
Okay, let's go to Sarah, Kaiser, and then Andrea about them.
Yeah, Kelly, I caught that same thing. And Rochelle, I also really liked this lesson. It's so clear. It's awesome. And I wonder if shifting the direction of it, instead of it's not easy to get, it is easy to prevent, if that might be the direction that we want to go instead, because it's preventable if we don't do these things. But I kind of agree, Kelly, that that sends a sort of a false sense of security that I'm a little uncomfortable with.
So you're saying possibly it's not easy to get, but it's easy to prevent?
I think I would, if it were me creating the message, I would not say it's not easy to get at all. I would just cut that completely. And I would say the good news is HIV is easy to prevent if you do these things, right? Or you don't do these things.
Okay.
That's how I would frame it.
Thank you. Andrea?
Yeah, I think what you're insinuating maybe, and Rochelle, this is a great lesson plan, would be to say compared to other communicable diseases that it's difficult to catch. But I do think either way would be probably a good way to phrase it. So, HIV is serious. It's very difficult. It can be difficult to catch comparative to other communicable diseases, but I do like the addition potentially of just saying, but it can be prevented, you know, as sort of a, you know, I think the idea is that we also don't want to, you know, shame people who have HIV, right? You know, you can be born with this, you can, there are lots of ways that people are you know, we do screen for this when it comes to getting blood products, but it doesn't mean that it's 100% effective, right? And so I think having both is probably good. But I do think, you know, putting that, you know, just comparing it to other, and it's such a fun word to say, right, Rochelle, communicable diseases, might be a good thing to do. But I do appreciate that it's there, only because we're trying to also not necessarily normalize, but to at least for those, you know, there could be someone in the class with HIV because they were born with it, right? And so for their classmates to know that they can still go about their everyday activities, I think is important. If we want to wrap up this conversation first, and then I have some other pointers, would that be better for you, Ashley?
Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense.
Okay.
So I'm hearing it's not easy to catch compared to other diseases, but it is easy to prevent.
Could I make a recommendation on it?
Yeah.
So what about, sorry, what about if we had something like this? Because you're referring to slide 9, right, Kelly?
Yes. Well, it's in slide 7. It's the title of the slide that you wanted to rearrange. HIV is not easy to get. And then in slide 9, it's repeated.
Okay.
So it's those two places, but I think the first bullet point, like I definitely think it needs to be addressed in slide 7, because that's the first place it is. And then easier, it's easier to do in 9. I think we just need to set the tone in 7.
Okay.
Like specifically for sure.
Okay. So at least then I think for slide 9, what about something like this? While difficult to catch compared to other communicable diseases, it is preventable for slide 9. And then on slide 7, since we're saying it's not easy to get, maybe we said something along the lines of HIV. So we're still doing the comparison aspect of it. We could say HIV is difficult to get compared to other communicable. God, that is a hard word sometimes. Communicable diseases. Would something like that work for you, you think, Kelly?
Will you repeat that one more time? Because my brain was also processing a thought. So like
Yeah,
in regards to
Annie,
wording.
on slide 7, we could just label that slide like HIV transmission or HIV, you know, keep it simple on that slide.
I like that.
You know?
I think what about that? I think that'd be way better. HIV transmission.
Yes.
That'd be great, actually. And then we could use the other saying for slide 9, if you're okay with that, Kelly.
And I'm fairly certain I liked what you said. Would you repeat it?
Yes. While difficult to catch compared to other communicable diseases, it is preventable. Or HIV is preventable rather than it is.
Yes. And I don't know, and I like that. I don't, what distracted me when you asked me the question initially, because I almost wonder if in our daily lives or our daily routine or our daily activities, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's what we're getting at, is that it's difficult to catch, or it's difficult compared to other communicable diseases in our daily routine. Like slide 7 very definitely says from needles, from this, from that, from that. That's not something people are doing in their daily routine. But it doesn't need to be there. I like exactly what you said, Manny. And so that's okay if we can't fit that other part in, or it's not necessary.
Sorry. Come help me on the PlayStation. Okay. So it sounds like we've settled on
what he said, Kelly. So I think I wrote it down.
Okay. Excellent.
If everyone's feeling good about that piece, I just have a couple of small things just from a healthcare standpoint, if you don't mind. When it's going through step 4, it's here on page 5. When we're saying, tell students that we usually keep people from getting a virus by giving them a vaccine, an injection, a shot to protect them from getting a particular infection. I would add getting sick from a particular infection would be more accurate, just to add that, and it makes it completely much more accurate.
Okay.
Where's Joy? We're watching Inside Out. Okay. And then the only other piece that I would say, not right now, okay. One thing that we could add is at the end when it says the only way to know for sure if someone has HIV is to get tested, there could be like maybe a little caveat to say when you should be tested, or maybe getting tested multiple times. So say, for example, if someone says, oh, I had unprotected sex last night, tomorrow I'm going to go get tested for HIV. I mean, you can test negative up to 6 months after an exposure. And so we usually educate patients on, we could test you now, but you should probably get tested in 6 months too, to be sure. Just like if you were to get a blood transfusion or something, we test you 6 months later. So it could be something as simple as like a little, an asterisk or a note to talk to your healthcare provider about when to get tested. But I just want to make sure that young people know, like, oh, don't have unprotected sex the night before and then go get tested and think that you're okay. Because often that is a misconception, but otherwise it looks really, really great.
So, Andrea, how would you like me to phrase that? So,
I mean, okay, for like a 6th grader, is that going to be something where you want to put like information for the teacher just to share, or potentially just add on the slide, like maybe an asterisk? I mean, I want to keep it short and appropriate for a 6th grader, but I want to also make sure they don't have this false sense of security where you can just go get tested once and think that you're perfectly fine.
okay.
So I would just maybe, but what do people think about, who hangs out with 6th graders? I'm still with a 3-year-old, right? So asterisk of saying, talk to your healthcare provider about getting tested or something like that, because then they're likely to get, that education, hopefully.
So I'm living with 2 12-year-olds.
Yeah. Tell me how it goes.
Grader.
Okay.
Yes.
We're still going with Joy. Okay.
Oh man. And I rely on what I've learned about HIV and AIDS to inform my discussion about COVID and that kind of testing and how do we make decisions. And that is know your status. And when you get tested, it's a snapshot picture. It's not like fortune telling. And they get it, and it's important, they're ready for details. They're ready for the meat of things. And generally the arguments are, I wasn't specific enough. Yes,
I think it's important enough information to augment the slide a little bit, not just to leave it on to the teacher to say, just make sure you get tested. You could even add it to the teacher information about you can test positive or negative up to 6 months after to follow up, but maybe putting on the slide with like a little asterisk there. It may be important to get tested more than once, and that can just open the conversation or something for the teacher. Does that look like something that people would think would look okay on the slide?
Yes.
I was thinking as you were speaking, that's exactly like the only way to know for sure is if someone gets tested, asterisk, what have you. Sometimes it takes 6 months for HIV to present itself. I mean, it's a fact. And then why not? I would put it right under that if that's what they need to know.
So what I'll do is what I would suggest then maybe is like a little asterisk. Sometimes it can take months to get a positive result after exposure.
Okay.
What do you think then, Andrea, about potentially adding a slide that says if you are worried you may have it or have been exposed, you can talk to the following people? Because as much as I love the idea that we're saying healthcare providers, I also am not foolish enough to think that a 6th grader knows exactly what a healthcare provider is, where they just might think be a clinical aid potentially. So maybe we add that slide that has that information for them.
take a picture. Like
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Actually, I was kind of surprised there wasn't some more, because there are some really good local clinics that really, like Northern Nevada Hopes is one of the, more forefront of HIV care and treatment. But I do think at least adding, if you have further questions about your health or something, we have I believe it's actually in one of the other lesson plans too, but we've put it in lots of lesson plans to talk to, your healthcare provider, a doctor, a nurse, or somebody like that, which I think could be. Rochelle, do you have a kind of a generic slide you've been using to put in for that?
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny you guys brought that up, because I got to the end of it and I'm like, how come I didn't add that slide that we've been adding to all the other lessons? It's just I just overshot it, I guess. But I did have that thought when I was reading through. I read through the lesson over and over and over, right? And then maybe the 2 weeks before I see you guys, I don't read it as much, as when I'm writing it. And then tonight I'm like, oh, I really didn't add that slide. So
and I think
what
we usually list, just so everybody can be known, it's parent or guardian, trusted adult, school counselor, school nurse, teacher, faith-based leader, health clinic, or healthcare provider.
Mm-hmm.
So we could. That's what we usually list for.
And are you, Andrea, Kelly, I do see you. Andrea, are you saying, really, do we need to make that change to slide 9 then? If slide 10 is, here's the, or maybe only way to know is to get tested, asterisk, talk to your healthcare provider. And then on the next page,
I still think just a small asterisk of sometimes it can take months for a positive test. That's simple enough. And then you can put information for the teacher, and then just adding one other slide that said, if you have more questions to talk to that list of people, would probably be appropriate.
That makes sense to me. We're getting on the medical information on that same slide, and then the resources for how to do that afterward. Okay, Kelly, do you still have something to say?
Yeah, and I was realizing as we are all talking, we're forgetting to say our names for the record, just so we know. Kelly Roper for the record. The slide 6 of the second lesson has the slide that isn't in there. So if anybody that's watching the meeting or what have you wants to see it later, I believe that's the slide that you're asking to be added to the end of this first lesson.
Thank you. Yes, Tanya.
I also thought it was a great presentation, and to start with, one extra positive thing that kind of stood out to me was slide 9, where you're talking about being a good friend and family member to someone who has HIV. I think that's super awesome attitude to bring into the lesson. The only thing I was thinking about a little bit is on slide 7, where we're talking about HIV can only be passed on from a person who is living with HIV. I feel like if I was a 6th grader, I might think oh, I live with someone who has HIV. So living with, I feel like it's a very polite way of saying it, but maybe we should just say who has HIV, or is there a reason not to say someone who has HIV? Because I feel like living with kind of can go different ways for kids' brains maybe.
Who is HIV positive maybe?
Yeah. And they know that positive is not a positive thing with this, right?
I think after COVID, they definitely do.
Okay, good point. Yes. And it's
so,
also repeated in the talking point for the teacher right after that slide also, if you want to use that as well. So instead of living with HIV, saying a person who is HIV positive or.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's not phrased that way to end a stigma about, oh yeah, they're positive, I don't know.
Yeah, or they have it. Yeah, it feels like a polite way, but I just want to make sure, let's be simple when we're talking to kids, because living with, oh no, as if you can transmit it because your mom has it or something.
Okay. Okay, anything else, Rabbi?
Benjamin Zober for the record. I fear I'm wading into a minefield in bringing this up, but looking at slide 5, the definition of abstinence, I think the second point about that you can stop having sex and become abstinent is potentially problematic, because if you contract HIV or AIDS and then stop having sex for one reason or another, including that you have it, does not work. The abstinence you now have does not work in the same way that it does in the other situations.
So we cannot change the definition of abstinence because this committee
Right.
voted on an overall one and the board approved it in December. However, we can clarify, right, like what you're talking about specifically for sexually transmitted infections and diseases. Just because you've stopped having sex does not mean you're no longer infected, or right.
Yeah.
I'm open to wording on that. Or maybe a note for the teacher.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think that would.
Perhaps to
Dreaded abstinence slide.
I think especially in regards to the fact that the infection will not show up in a test for a period of time.
Yep.
I think that makes it even more critical.
Yeah.
I mean, if I drawing from our experiences with COVID, right? We bump up against someone in the supermarket, we freak out, and then a few days later we go, okay, I'm not sneezing, coughing, losing taste, I'm probably safe. It's a little bit harder when it can take 6 months before even a test would show it, and any symptoms can be much later.
Yeah. Yep. And that's one of the things I think that made it so devastating in the 80s and 90s. Okay, thank you for bringing that up. I think that was really important to say and address.
So did we agree that it's going to be put in the teacher's notes, or we're going to add a slide to it?
Well, we haven't officially agreed on anything until we voted, but it sounds like Rochelle thinks that would be a good fit. And I saw lots of nodding.
Kelly Roper, for the record, I feel like it probably should be notes, because if we go down that rabbit trail, then it's any STD, any what have you. I mean, if that's something that as we revisit 7th, 8th in high school, when we're just renovating, like with notes, I mean, like, I think I would never have read the definition of abstinence and think that just because I've decided to become abstinent, things that I had before are all of a sudden gone. So I definitely think, I think it's good for people to realize within the definition of abstinence, oh, I have had sex, I can stop the act of sex and be considered abstinent, but I don't think anyone expects that to magically wipe away any health consequences that they already are living with. So I think that would just be something down the road to just, if we need to, reinforce in our STD, HIV type lessons, that well, I'm not going to say her.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Sarah.
Sarah Linda Kaiser. Okay, Sarah Kaiser for the record. Kelly, so I'm sorry, I got lost, and I think it was because my video froze. But so are you saying you do want the slide to read something more on that, or you're supporting it belongs in the teacher's notes?
Kelly Roper, for the record, I'm supporting this belongs in the teacher's notes, and quite possibly it's something that belongs on all teacher records in the future, just so it could be something that, kids realize that this is, that it's something just for the future for teacher notes, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That clarified it for me. Thank you.
Okay, we can address the future lessons as they come up. Okay, anything else? Okay, Luis, do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment at this time.
Thank you. I'd be ready to entertain a motion unless you had further discussion.
I could do it, you guys. I could do it.
Do it.
Yes, you can.
Make it happen.
You got it.
Okay. Let's just hope Joy stays where she is. Okay, Andrea Thompson for the record. All right, so I, Andrea Thompson, make a motion that we, usually we have all these great little things where I can say it.
I know.
that we send for board approval the 6th grade curriculum to include lesson plans and accompanying PowerPoint materials on HIV/AIDS, learn the facts, fight the stigma, and stay safe, with the following changes to the curriculum. One, that we make clear that this is 6th grade curriculum, even though there was some 7th grade conversation or up in the header. The second would be to arrange slide 7 so that the top reach HIV transmission, and that we remove the bullet point that is bolded to the top of the bullet points. That we also rearrange slide 9 to state that rather it is difficult to catch compared to other communicable diseases, but it is easy to prevent. We also then add an asterisk on slide 9 to the last bullet point, which states sometimes it can take months for a positive exposure, and then subsequently add in the teacher's note that it can take up to 6 months for a positive result after exposure, and they can talk to your healthcare provider. That we also change under step 4 under the teacher's curriculum, that we add sick to the verbiage when they're talking about vaccinations. So it says they can protect them from getting sick from a particular infection rather than just getting a particular infection. That we had an additional last slide that has listed resources if you have questions or concerns about HIV or transmission, to talk to a parent or guardian, trusted adult, school counselor, school nurse, teacher, faith-based leader, health clinic, or healthcare provider. And finally, that we add in the teacher's notes when going over the definition of abstinence, to note that if you are HIV positive, new abstinence will not cure any sort of HIV infection.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Kelly?
Kelly Roper, second, but I think we left 2 things out. Can I add them in my second?
You
Or
can
how
add
do
them.
I
Would you like
do
to make
that?
a friendly amendment?
I'd like to second and make a friendly amendment.
Okay.
That we need to change, I believe, what Tanya was saying about it, HIV positive, instead of living with HIV in those 2 places that she
Okay.
mentioned. And also, I believe in slide 7, we were rephrasing, instead of saying HIV is not easy to get, we were retitling it HIV transmission or something like that.
Yes, I believe that I did cover that one, but I would accept both of those friendly amendments.
Okay.
And what you're referring to for Tanya was both on slide 7. So those living with HIV, instead we'll put person who is HIV positive. And then I believe it was also in the teacher's notes.
Yes. Yes.
I will
And I
accept
accept
those.
my friendly amendments as well.
Can I make a question or friendly amendment? I'm not sure which.
I think Sarah Montalvo, do we need to vote before we have questions?
No,
Okay.
well, how about Tanya, you state what you're seeking, if it's either a question, because you're not sure if it's a question or if it's actual friendly
Yeah,
amendment.
it
So
was
why
just a
don't you first?
clarification of, so this is Tanya Hayes, of what Andrea said. I think that you said something about the testing and how it can take months. I think that what you just said was can take months for a positive exposure. Is that the language, or you mean a positive test after exposure?
Yeah, sometimes it can take months for a positive test after an exposure.
Okay. I think that wording was slightly different when you said it. So I just wanted to, I don't know, do I
Rochelle,
make
did you
an
get that
amendment
piece?
to add that? Or? Okay, we got it. Thanks. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Or no. Excellent, thank you. So on motion introduced by Andrew Thompson, second by Kelly Roper, and friendly amendment from Kelly Roper, seconded by Andrea, the motion passes unanimously. Well done.
Bravo, Rochelle.
Go team.
Okay, we're moving on.
Okay, Rochelle, do you need a break before we go to the next
Yeah,
lesson?
that would be great. Thank you, because I've been drinking a lot of fluids today.
Okay, good job taking care of yourself. Okay, let's just take a 5-minute break and we will reconvene at 6:26.
Awesome.
Thank you for muting and
If anybody is curious, Alabama is winning the national championship 21-14.
Oh, my family's going to be so happy. Thank you for sharing that.
I was going to say, is that a good thing? Who are they playing? That's how clueless I am.
Ohio State.
Oh,
That's the Ohio State.
I was going to
I
say.
am sorry, Rabbi Benjamin. The Ohio State.
What sport are we talking about?
Football?
I'm just kidding. I used to follow football really closely for years. Okay, we have just about everyone.
Waiting on Andrea and Lydia.
Yeah. Let's give them one more minute, maybe.
Perfect. Thank you for the break. Thank you. Was in the back of my mind, but I would have just right. That typical teacher, we just keep rolling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to be more mindful of that, right? I could just keep, but we don't have to do that.
Actually, I don't think it ever really goes away once you have it ingrained, because I've been out of the classroom now for a while and I still have that like mentality of just plow through.
Yeah.
I mean,
there are no bathroom breaks.
I don't ever eat like throughout the day ever because I'm so busy doing stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm actually allowed to.
Right. You can do that. All right. It is 6:28 and we'll resume if, Luis, are you back with us? Just make sure we're ready to go.
There he is.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Yes.
Yes, share your screen, and we're moving on to item 2.03, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the 6th grade lesson, Change is Good, Puberty.
Okay, here we go. And as we're going through, I was just thinking too at our break, we will be coming back to 6th grade at our next meeting. So we're not done with 6th grade as far as lessons, just to make sure everybody's in understanding that you're not feeling like we've left something out of our kind of continuous role with healthy relationships, that kind of thing. So just keep that in the back of your mind as well. So this lesson topic is Change is Good. The objectives, short and sweet, name at least 2 physical, social, cognitive, and emotional changes young people go through during adolescence. Again, same video that I shared with you for 6th grade, the sex education for middle school puberty. So Kelly, did you watch that video again? And then Change is Good, sorting activity. Again, addressing this lesson, there is an online version that I set up that I thought, well, it could be, directed through the teacher as whole class. If it's distance learning, again, it's just an option. It's not something we have to keep, depending on how you all feel about it. And the regular hard copy activity is also included at the end of this lesson. And then the lesson intro is the same that we just reviewed and that we have continued to use in all of our share lessons as we move forward. So Change is Good, puberty. Oh, don't die now, mouse. So what is puberty? Your body goes through some amazing changes, physical, social, emotional, and cognitive. Puberty can begin at any time, usually between the ages of 8 and 15. You might feel excited at times and weird at others, like your body is out of control. All of these changes and feelings are normal. Puberty is started by the natural chemicals in our body called hormones. And then again, this is just stating what we said in the slide. So when your body's going through some amazing changes, for some this may have started already, for others they might not start for a few years. Some changes make you feel good about yourself, exciting to see yourself growing up. Other changes may feel weird, like your body's a bit out of control at times. As we go through the lesson and as you experience these changes, try to always remember that all of these changes are normal. And they are all important parts of growing up that everyone goes through. This time of growth is called puberty, and that it's started by the natural chemicals in our bodies called hormones. So again, that's the teacher points behind the slide. And then the video. And I believe I have it at the exact stopping point you all chose when we did the videos earlier. And then step 3, although a great deal of emphasis tends to be placed on the physical changes of puberty, the changes we go through during this time are not simply physical, they are also social, cognitive, and emotional. So changes during puberty: social, how we interact with others; cognitive, how we think, process information, and learn; emotional, feelings and our awareness of what may or may not cause us to feel certain things; and physical, how our body is changing. So again, social changes have to do with how we interact with others; cognitive changes, how we do with how we think, process information, and learn; emotional changes have to do with feelings and our awareness of what may or may not cause us to feel certain things. And then physical changes have to do with how our body is changing. So, and then on the board, write the words physical, emotional, social, and cognitive. And then we're going to add student input beneath each of the headings. Ask for examples of what a physical change could be in puberty, as part of puberty. Ask what they think might change socially when you start adolescence or going through puberty. And if they can't think of one, say you may end up spending or wanting to spend more time with your friends than with your family. An example for an emotional change. Again, if they can't think of one, tell them that they may end up feeling very strong emotions out of nowhere, both positive and negative. And while there's a stereotype that only girls feel these strong emotions, students of all genders usually experience this at different times during adolescence. Ask what they think might change cognitively when they start adolescence, going through puberty. If they cannot think of an example of cognitive change might be some temporary fogginess in how they think, followed by a clearing of that fogginess as they get older. And explain that an example of this fogginess might include forgetting to bring things with them when they go to and from school. And then the change is good activity. And I put the QR code. So if, depending again on classroom setup, if they were using smart devices in the classroom, again, that teacher autonomy on how best to present this activity with the class. And I explained that this can be done individually using the link or the QR code, or students can work individually or as partners to complete the activity sort that's included at the end of the lesson. And so each group with, there's a typo. Each group will get an envelope containing a complete set of changes good cards. In each set, there will be 4 header sheets: physical, social, cognitive, and emotional. Ask the students to spread the header sheets on the desk space or floor in front of them. Take out the remaining cards, read through them together, and decide which kind of change each is. Once they all agree, they should wait for the other groups to finish, and then remind them to look at the board if they forget the definitions of any of the header terms, and go over the group sorts. As students finish, have groups share what they had included in each column. And then in closing, remind students that if they have other questions to ask. So here's that slide we were discussing at the previous lesson. If you have more questions, ask your parent or guardian, trusted adult, school counselor, school nurse, teacher, faith-based leader, health clinic, and or healthcare provider. And then this was the activity for teachers to print and cut out and put in envelopes. And the answer sheet should be up the end, but first, there we go. Answer key, and then this is our answer key. As far as the activity goes. This is pretty short and sweet lesson because the video is also a little bit longer too, and the activity involved in it. And these are all discussions and things that I've noticed. I have to say, just a side note, when I'm teaching share, a lot of times we just talk about the physical changes. And I try and remind the students that yes, boys and girls are males and females, all of our kiddos, no matter what, will experience some emotional changes at times, feeling sad, feeling happy, without understanding necessarily why they feel that way. So I think it's imperative that we talk a little bit more about it than we have in the past. So there you go. You want me to stop sharing, Ashley?
Yes, please. Thank you, Rochelle. And I just really appreciate your perspective on that and you introducing that. I'm finding I've been talking as a parent and an auntie, I've been talking with these kids about the physical changes, right? Like there's never a time when you shouldn't know, you shouldn't get to know that your body will be growing up, right? That's how in puberty is how we get our adult bodies. But now that I've got the 2 12-year-olds in the house 24/7, I'm finding the conversation we are really having is, I know this is really hard, COVID is really hard for you because right now your brain wants to be with family, right? Like that's normal to want to be with family more than, or with friends more than family. And I know you're having a really hard time socially and emotionally, and we've all been through there. And that's super normal for it to be challenging, right? And that's been the conversation they've wanted to have is like, oh, it's not like me, right? Only who struggles with all of or has these changes, and it's normal. And then there's the other side to it when I'm not having to go through it every day. So thank you so much. That's beautiful. This is like exactly the conversation we've been wanting and needing to have. So that's my only take on the whole thing.
Oh,
thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? I'm looking at Lydia. Okay.
Find my unmute here. I agree. I thought it was really good. And I feel like also as a parent of a 12-year-old, we're having these conversations all of the time too. The only thing I wanted to point out, and again, it's not a deal breaker for me, but just in the interest of accuracy and being factual in the sort, like the card sort thing at the end, the activity at the end. And there's that one that says, feel paranoid, everyone's looking and talking at, looking at / talking about me. Actually, in the adolescent development kind of science, if you will, that's actually a cognitive change, not an emotional change. And it stems from advances in metacognition and social cognition. And I don't know how, I don't know if it's that important. It's more important that the kids know that it's got, that's normal and that it happens. But I can just, it was just something that I noticed in there that I know in my class, I drilled them pretty hard on that. Like, this is, no, you're not going crazy. It's not your hormones that are making you feel that way. It's that your brain is changing and that things are happening cognitively that, yes, you should be going through this period because you're, in the sense, like I talked to my child about it in terms of, you're getting smarter, you're learning more, you understand that other people have their own ideas that are different from yours, and you're worried about what other people think. That's a pretty advanced skill to have. Less about paranoid makes it sound like something's wrong,
okay,
wrong with me, or that it's driven maybe hormonally, which it isn't in terms of the science. So that's all. I don't even know that I don't know if you need to fix it or if you don't, but it should be something maybe teachers know.
Okay. So Lydia, are you feeling like I should omit the term paranoid as well and just kind of leave it as feeling like everyone's looking or talking about me?
Yeah, that's.
Whatever.
It does feel, for some kids, it does feel paranoid. For some kids, it's not being paranoid. Some kids, and we do see this a lot in adolescence, they're not paranoid about it at all. They think they're cool. Like, this is great. Right. I post on social media every 4 seconds of the day because everybody out there in the world wants to know what I think, right? And they're not paranoid at all. They just think that everybody has this heightened interest in them and what they have to say or do or look like or, whatever. And I'm just saying that technically, if it were my lesson, I would just move that correct answer to the cognitive, and then I would explain why because the kids are going to probably see that word feel and they're going to put it in emotional. And I think it's really, I think it's important to talk to them about, no, actually, this is your brain changing, and that's a good thing. Like, we expect that to happen, and as your brain continues to develop, you're going to realize They maybe you're not as important as you think you are. You know, you're gonna get grounded a little bit in reality and realize that other people aren't always thinking about you. But that's a totally normal process in healthy brain development. So,
so in the answer key, you want that moved into cognitive
I would put it there as a
and some explanation.
Human development. As someone who teaches adolescent development, I would put it in cognitive. But I think
seems like the expertise to
an
listen
explanation
to
as to why it was there, because they might think it was in the. That was my only feedback. Otherwise, I thought it was great.
That's high praise from someone who does this for a living. Excellent. Okay, Andrea?
All right, I think super great lesson. I want to know what your guys' opinion might be on just like a couple small things. On the very last slide, on slide 6, where it says if you have more questions, ask your. I was thinking maybe if you have more questions about these changes or lack of changes, or what something that we could say, because from a healthcare perspective, if someone's in there going, oh, it's just, you know, maybe it will happen to me later, but you know, if people aren't actually going through some of these changes from a healthcare perspective, it's good to talk to their provider. So I don't know if lack of changes is a good wording for 6th graders or not, but just by adding that little extra verbiage, if they're concerned, like, why don't I feel this way? Sometimes I have young people coming to me and ask me that, and maybe they have a thyroid issue or something that we could catch early. So that could be something to potentially add. And then my other piece was on slide 2, you know, what is puberty, which I think is really great. All the information is wonderful. I was wondering if maybe there could be a bullet point that kind of emphasizes why it's important for those who identify as male or female to know what's going on in another person's body. So, you know, sometimes people might think, you know, I was thinking maybe what is puberty and why it's important. You know, all these changes and feelings are normal. Maybe adding a bullet point that says, you know, it's important for those who identify with, you know, whether you're identify with male or female, to know that changes are happening in both, in all bodies, essentially. Because I think sometimes at this age, you know, it could be, you know, those who identify as female, like, well, why do I need to know what's happening in a boy's body, or vice versa, when in reality, if they have that information, they're less likely to criticize, or they're more likely to, you know, help a classmate if they recognize that maybe something's going on. So I don't know if it's something that needs to necessarily be added, but I just wanted to know your guys' thoughts, because that's something that comes up, I would say, in clinic most often with siblings in clinic is what I see. But it could be something like maybe Manny has some information on, you know, like being in with that group. But those would be my only suggestions. So
let's do Manny and then Kelly.
Yeah, Andrea, I'm really actually glad that you brought that up, because I wasn't really sure how to word it, but I was just suddenly thinking for any of our trans students, how they would necessarily respond to this lesson. So I think the fact that we do add that would be really good, so that this way it would kind of just normalize, I guess, it for everybody to understand that everybody's going to go through changes. And then any of our students that are trans, like, they can understand that, like, my biological body might be this, but like, this isn't how I'm identifying. So I really think that it's really, honestly, I just think that it's really good that we're adding that point too there on them. What is puberty? And I really think we should probably emphasize, like, just kind of emphasize that, like, this is what the male body goes through. This is what the female body goes through when we talk about some of those changes later on, potentially.
what if we added a bullet point that said, no matter what gender you identify with, everyone will go through changes? You know, something very general, because then it's encompassing all, and, you know, that's why it's important to know what's going on in, you know, in anybody's body, because, you know, no matter what, however you identify, you will go through some type of change.
What if we just, the second bullet on slide 2 begins, puberty can begin at any time. Puberty can be, you know, puberty, everyone goes through puberty, or all genders experience puberty, and it can begin at any time.
Yeah, I think that would work. Yeah, I think that would work in terms of saying it like that. Just kind of making it that somewhat broad statement would. Normally, I know we always talk about, like, being specific, but I think this might be one time when we want to have a broad statement to kind of encompass everybody.
That
Yeah,
makes
I
sense to
like
me.
that language. And so basically it would just be for the second bullet point, all genders experience puberty and it can begin at any time, usually between ages 8 and 15. I think it's great. It just kind of, for that one student who might be thinking, you know, how they're identifying, at least they'll know like this lesson applies to you and it's all, and everybody's gonna know it's important, you know?
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kelly?
I was just going to give back Manny and Andrea's words to them that they gave me previously when I
Oh.
was struggling with this video. If you recall, I was struggling with the whole cottage cheese thing, and or other stuff. And both of you were saying that because I was struggling with, are they separate? Are they together? You know, why necessarily are the girls watching the boy video? And you guys told me also for empathy, you know what I mean? So that girls might have empathy with the boys would have empathy with the girls, especially when it came to like erections in class. So I like the way you both decided it could just say all genders, but where I was thinking when you were talking about it was what you guys told me 2 months ago, maybe, which was empathy. And so that the genders could have empathy and know that odor is out of somebody's control for the most part, or erections can be totally out of the girls' control or boys' control, excuse me. So, I mean, those kind of things, but I don't know if it fits anywhere, but that was the answer to my question when I heard you start talking about it.
I wonder if it could be added on that same slide, which I don't want it to get too busy, but all of these changes and feelings are normal. And then we could maybe add just something very brief, you know, and are, you know, important to know, something that would give that piece of empathy. I mean, I know what you're saying. It's hard to put the language in there without making it wordy, but maybe and important to recognize, you know, what your classmates might be going through. What
Let's
you and
see
your
what-
classmates might be going through, you know?
That might be good. Sarah Linda?
Yeah, I love all of the direction this conversation is going. I am starting to get a little twitchy about this slide though, and how many words are ending up on this slide. And so I'm wondering, we've got the what slide. What is puberty? What if we move to a second slide? Why are we studying puberty? Because everybody goes through it. It's normal. We get the empathy. If we can we divide those two pieces out in any way so that we have two slides that are pretty powerful rather than one that's a little overwhelming? What do you think?
Especially
Well,
because there aren't that many slides. So adding one is not a big deal on this one.
Well, and what you could do is, you know, the change in the second bullet point, keep it the same, and then take the fourth and the fifth bullet point, move them to a separate slide that say, why are we discussing puberty? But then still add that all of these changes and feelings are normal and important to recognize what you and your classmates might be going through. Then we've got two separate slides, not super wordy, but we're also getting, it's still not like a lot of extra information.
Okay. I love working with you guys. Kelly? And then Manny.
Okay, so I wanted to let that wrap up before I addressed one other thing Andrea said, which was slide 6. If you have more questions, I was thinking about what is or is not happening. Like if you have, like maybe you could phrase it like that. If you have questions about what is or is not happening. And then the only other thing, that activity, I loved. The scan code did not work for me. I don't know if other people tried to use the scan code, but the link did. And I played it and I failed some of the questions because I was just trying to drag them. But I did like how, if people choose to do it that way, I like how there's instantaneous feedback of, oh, no, it's not emotional. No, it's not cognitive. And I'm like, okay, well, is it social? You know? And so I thought that was great because I wasn't using my cheat sheet. The only thing is, I think, and it's not wrong in the slideshow, but menstruation is maybe misspelled in the online game.
Okay.
And I just played it. And so I thought, well, I'll just play the game because I can get into it. So But that's it. I loved it. I thought this was great.
Thank you for giving that a test drive for us, Kelly. Hey, Manny, you had possibly had something to say. Are we good? Or
Yeah, it was just more a question for everybody on here. Just kind of how we've been talking about all the changes and everything. Do we want to maybe after slide 4, maybe just make a note that says like typically the most recognizable changes of puberty are the physical changes, but the rest of these changes are important also? Because I kind of just thinking about how like we know that the social, cognitive, and emotional changes are just as important, but we only ever recognize the physical ones. Just kind of maybe make a note of that. I mean, I'm okay either way.
I think anyone who's spent time in a 6th grade classroom knows there are some other changes that are recognizable before the physical, you know. I mean, Lydia, would there be a, you know?
Yeah, Lydia,
But I tell our teacher, like my students, who many are going to be teachers and many are going to be counselors, etc. The physical changes that are actually visible to others are not the first things that happen. And so if we're waiting to talk about puberty until we see changes, we're too late.
Yeah.
Because changes that are physical, the actual things that are changing are going to not be noticeable to others because they're underneath our clothes and whatever. And then but actually a lot of the social, emotional, and cognitive stuff is actually happening first. We just don't always start attributing it to puberty until we see them changing. Growth spurt's actually one of the first things that we do tend to see, is that getting taller and heavier. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
it kind of is there. That's why I was just thinking, do we want to make a point for the students to be able to recognize that and just kind of see? Just because we see the physical changes doesn't mean that you haven't already started puberty, and these other changes are just as important. I don't know. I'm also kind of thinking out loud on this one a little bit here.
I feel like that's the point of this lesson, is that it's all of these things. Just the puberty, but
yeah. Sarah Linda?
I wonder if we added something in the teacher's notes to draw the students' attention to the order of the bullet points on that slide. The physical bullet point is the last bullet point on that slide. And so if the teachers sort of emphasize that piece, hey, notice these things, that might achieve what we're talking about here.
I like that idea, Sarah Linda. I think that's a good one.
I know the first thing I noticed is a social regression. We have to, right? And then we spring forward.
Or the emotional regression.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know who cries more, my 5-year-old or my 12-year-old.
Yeah, 12. Definitely. It's so hard. Okay. It seems like we're kind of dying down here a little bit, or settling into things. Luis, do we have any public comment on this item? You're muted. Sorry.
No public comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we can discuss more, but I'm certainly ready to entertain a motion.
Who's going to do it? Because I could do it.
I don't remember how to do it without my cheat sheet, and I don't know where that is. So,
right.
Andrea, it's all you.
All right. So Andrea,
go for it, Andrea.
Propose that we take the lesson plan, which was presented for the sexual health and responsibility education 6th grade curriculum, the lesson plan, including upcoming PowerPoints, presentation materials, and drafts for lesson change is good, puberty, to the Board of Trustees for approval with the following corrections: that we move, that we split slide 2 into 2 slides. The first slide would be what is puberty, and on the second, we keep the first 3 bullet points, but amend the second bullet point to state that all genders experience puberty and it can begin at any time, usually between the ages of 8 and 15. And then on a new slide 3, we have a why is this important? And that we keep the original 4th and 5th bullet point to be just 2 bullet points, but we put all of these changes and feelings are normal and important to recognize what you and your classmates might be going through. And that we then have slide 3 will become slide 4. Slide 4 will become slide 5, and that associated with the teacher's notes on new slide 5 that we appreciate the order of the bullet points which are being presented, that these can present at any time, not just physical first. Slide 5 now becomes slide 6, and then slide 6 becomes slide 7. And we also add at the top of the slide, if you have more questions about what is or is not happening to your body, ask your ... and those that are listed.
Beautifully done. Do we have a second, Manny?
I second that motion.
Thank you. Further discussion? No? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Okay, so the motion proposed by Andrea, seconded by Manny Magana, passes unanimously. Very well done. Excellent. Okay. Luis, is there any public comment for item 3.01?
No.
Thank you. Okay, our next meeting will be Monday, February 8th, 2021. And what time is it? Oops, hold on, I have a chat. Let me make sure I'm not missing something. Okay, I will not. Thank you. Okay, so at 6:58, our meeting is adjourned.
Check your chats, guys.
Check your chats. Thank you very much, everyone. Very well done.
Okay.
Okay.